why it's an extremely important issue, because it relates to the security of people in their homes in terms of when the police have a right to walk around their house and look through the bedrooms and everything else. Unless, are there any other comments or discussion? Commissioner Siegel.
To be clear, this came up a month or two ago when a citizen complained and felt intruded upon by officers who went and did a quick sweep, or a sweep, I haven't characterized it as sweep, as quick. So that's specific, and it could happen again any time with one of our cases, so we would look forward to getting that direction. Commissioner Foster requested that we bring the matter back to the full commission. We had been using this committee as a way of not taking everybody's time at the full commission hearings to slow down the whole hearing for these matters, and we'd go into greater detail. But I want to respect his request that it go back to the full commission. If we pursue it here, I would like your agreement, Mr. Chairman, and other committee members, that irrespective of what conclusions we draw, we will give a full report back to the entire commission on what we've deliberated on, even if we find that there's nowhere else to look. And we'll give them that material.
Commissioner Siegel, you don't need to get my commitment. That's my intent throughout this whole process. Whatever we're doing here, we're doing for the benefit of the full POC, and whatever we learn here, we'll report back to the full POC. But this is exactly the reason this would be an enormous waste of time for the whole POC to start doing this. I mean, this is going to involve, my impression is it's going to involve perhaps a couple of meetings before we can figure out what's going on, how to best handle it, what reasonable recommendations we should be making to the full POC, and that's exactly what committees are for, is to do that legwork, so to speak, for the full POC. But I can assure you, this will end up going to the full POC one way or another.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, if I might add, at least it's my desire and my understanding that when we talk like this with APD in a hearing like this, it's just as useful to them. They start to notice the SOP gaps and flaws or the training issues that might need to be clarified, and make recommendations within themselves, and then can report back to us. Thanks for the hard questions. We can make adjustments as we see fit. I think it's a two-way street. I think it's important that you came, and I'm grateful to you for your time.
Well, Commissioner Siegel, I certainly hope that we're not doing this just for our own benefit. I mean, 90%, 95% of all this is for the benefit of working with the police department to try to improve the system for the public, the police department, and everybody else. I mean, so I hope that the police department's listening. But any other questions? Okay. Mr. Wolf, thank you very much for coming down. I'm sorry, I had no, and I don't think anybody else had any intention of putting you in a difficult position, putting you on the spot in any way, but you can understand what we're trying to explore here, and I hope, and with your providing that training material and the scenarios, that would be enormously helpful to us in terms of advancing this issue.
Yes, sir, at any time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is standards established by the Independent Review Officer for inactivating the CPCs. And I might say that, just in general response to Commissioner Foster's public statement, this particular item, for example, he was suggesting this should go back to the long-term, to the full POC. This and the three other items on the agenda should go back to the full POC because it's outside our jurisdiction. If Commissioner Foster may not recall, but this is specifically on our agenda because we raised this at the POC. In the full POC, this came up in the context of a particular CPC, and as a result, the full POC directed the matter be referred to the Long-Term Planning Committee for us to explore it and make a report back, which is what we're in the process of doing. So I would think we'd have jurisdiction of anything the full POC gives us. So with that comment, Ms. Hammer, have you put together anything in terms of a standard, an activating standard of the discretionary kind that you were talking about?
We don't have any written materials for today. I think what even the minutes reflect is that I would present a rule to the full POC.
No, it did not.
That was my understanding.
Oh, present would come here first. We asked you to bring it here so that we could talk about it and then we could make a report or a recommendation to the full POC.
That was not my understanding, my understanding was present any work, that it was raised at here and that it would be presented to the full POC.
Have you prepared anything in writing, a standard in writing at all?
I have the draft of the standard in writing. Yes.
Do you have it here with you?
No, I do not.
Are you planning to present it at the full POC meeting in August? No. I'm sorry, September?
Yes.
So you plan to not present it to us first?
Unless if you want to look at it, we can present it at the October LTPC meeting, if that's what your preference would be.
Because we have to cancel the September, you're going to be at Nicole at the September meeting, right? LTPC meeting?
Yes.
There will be no September long-term planning committee meeting because the IRO and the staff will be at the Nicole meeting. Any of you going to the Nicole meeting?
Your preference.
I haven't done that.
Okay.
Commissioner Foster's gonna be gone too.
It's my desire or intention is that word. My intention is it wouldn't be a rule for the POC, but it would be a written office policy of the IRO presented to the.
Madam, at the last, and we can check the audio if we have to, but at the last long-term planning committee meeting, you were specifically asked to draft an addition, bear with me just a second. An addition to the proposed rule addition to section 5B of our rules, which lays out 11 bases for inactivating a CPC complaint. And you were specifically, as I understand it, specifically asked, and you would agree to, draft another subpart of 5B that would deal with inactivation that would be within your discretion, whatever criteria you would use, whether it be checking just the first time violation or first time allegation against an officer, not only in front of the IRO's office, the CPC, but also in front of Internal Affairs, and you were going to draft a rule change. And rule changes would have to come before, it seems to me, would have to come before this committee first so that we could staff them out, and then make a recommendation to the full POC.
Well, I don't think that there's any requirement, anything that this comes before this committee. There are provisions for rule change to be, as far as notice needs to be given and all those other formal, there are formal requirements on how rule changes are made. And what my intention was to present to the POC what language I had, and then if it was approved to go forward as a rule change, then give the formal notice that's required before being voted on for the POC.
But Ms. Hammer, this is the very kind of issue that Commissioner Foster is. That's going to waste the time of the full POC, and it eliminates the value of a committee to do the staff work first, rather than bring it cold to the full POC. And I'm just looking to see.
I wouldn't say it was a waste of the POC's time. It would be the
It's a less efficient use of the. I'm sorry, I misphrased. A less efficient use of the POCs. Okay, well, let me ask you this. If we pass a motion now that you would, directing you to draft whatever amendment you would propose to Rule 5B of the POC's rules to cover the kind of inactivation that you want to do, and direct you to bring it back to this committee before it's presented to the full POC, I assume you would comply with that. Is that not a fair statement?
I would comply with that absent, or if John Du Bois gives a legal opinion that this committee has the ability to direct me to do anything, then I would do it. I think that that's what's on the table right now. There's concern.
Well, it's been a big secret as to what's in the table. That's what I was trying to find out.
That's what
Are you familiar with the issue?
Mr. Du Bois has talked to me about the issue, yes.
What is the issue?
What authority the LTPC and the POC has to direct the IRO to do anything in the role of oversight? Does oversight mean direct?
I didn't know that was an issue, and thank you for enlightening me that was an issue.
It was an issue that was brought to my attention from Mr. Du Bois. It wasn't an issue that I brought to Mr. Du Bois. And so Mr. Du Bois has been asked to be given a legal opinion as to what that means, and I told him whatever he discerns that means, I will follow his rule, his lead, because he is the legal counsel for the POC.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Peterson.
What you're saying, I mean, that falls right in line with Chairman Foster's earlier statement.
Gotcha.
Or Commissioner Foster, sorry. Give you a quick promotion. As far as Mr. Du Bois saying who answers to who and who, I mean, is that in line with what he was saying earlier?
That's in line, yes, but it was, I want to be clear, that discussion did not originate from me. It came from Mr. Du Bois, directed to me saying, I'm looking into this issue.
Commissioner Segal.
Can I ask first, when did that occur? I'm startled by this entire line of discussion. When did Mr. Du Bois advise you that you might not answer to us at all?
That's not what he advised me.
I'm sorry, when did you and Mr. Du Bois discuss this topic?
Sometime within the last month, sometime between the last LTPC and this meeting.
Okay, because there was no report on it to us at the last full POC hearing 2 weeks ago.
I think that Mr. Du Bois has been working on the issue and has not reached a conclusion on what his legal opinion is. So I don't think he had anything to report last time.
I'm amazed to notice how prescient Commissioner Foster was in his remarks, or else you knew somehow that you two had communicated about this matter, which I would find surprising but not impossible to believe. At this point, is it your idea that you don't have to answer if we ask you for data matters input?
It's not my idea anything. My idea is John Du Bois is working on a legal opinion, and when John Du Bois comes up with his opinion, then I'll do whatever he says. At this point, I would assume that we have a working relationship. You request things, and I do them. But I think the question is the verb that you use. Can you order me to do something? Or can we work together as a team and you can request that we work together as a team? I think to me that's the difference.
Okay, well, I don't remember anymore from a month ago what was said, but I think it was, in my memory, requested of you that you bring to us a draft of this proposed rule change so that we could study it in this committee in some detail and then report it back out to the full POC.
Which the full POC has asked,
And
which the full POC asked us to do.
Well, I believe that my memory, and we can look at the TV on that one, was that Commissioner Segal brought it up as a topic, and Commissioner Segal said, hey, let's take that to the LTPC. I don't think it was a direct order from Cameron to saying, you shall hear this. I
believe there was a motion passed. There was a motion passed referring the matter to the LTPC.
Mr. Chairman,
We can check the video.
does anybody know where Mr. Du Bois is today?
He is not here today, I don't know.
I picked up on that part. Okay.
Let me ask you this, Ms. Hammer. To finesse the issue for the time being, if we request you to prepare as we thought we already did, prepare a draft amendment to Section 5B of the rules to provide you with the kind of power or authority to inactivate a certain category of CPCs, however you want to phrase it in the proposed rule, would you be prepared to bring that to us so that we could review it with you first before it goes to the full POC?
Sure.
Do you need a motion for that?
No, because I think a motion goes to an order.
No, a motion doesn't. A motion can say we request. And then it just becomes a vote of all of us, so it's clear it's not just one or two of us asking.
Well, it's fine. I will bring it to the October meeting. LTPC meeting.
you, Mr. Chairman. At some point, sooner than later, I'd like to discuss what's new to me also, that we would not have a September meeting with the LTPC. And I'd like to discuss the possibility of rescheduling when it's possibly convenient to staff and to the rest of us, so that we can keep all this stuff moving. It's a shame to put a 2-month gap in LTPC's business. Thank you. So we perhaps can take that up, and in the meantime, I don't know whether you want to have a motion or not, but request that at the next meeting, the IRO bring this draft up for our consideration.
I would recharacterize it as at the next meeting, whether it's September, October, that's acceptable to you.
That's fine.
Okay. And why don't we take up on the other matters, the issue of September LTPC meeting. Okay. The status of, and by the way, I would just point out that this draft agenda, Ms. Hammer, you drafted this agenda initially, and you're the one who put in standards established for the.
Right, and I was gonna report that I was planning to bring it to the POC,
Okay.
that's my
All right.
status.
I understand, okay, I understand that. Now, the next issue is the status of negotiations with the APD on a possible MOU or change of the SOPs.
The SOP committee continues to work on it, and at their next meeting, I believe it's I've seen drafts coming through, but I don't know when their next meeting is scheduled.
When you say working on, what specifically are they working on?
The SOP for officer-involved shootings.
And the IRO's role in it?
Yes.
Okay. Are you and Cameron and Varela having any involvement in the drafting of that?
We had a meeting with several members of the command staff of the Albuquerque Police Department, and we voiced what we wanted to be included in the draft. So the answer is yes.
And you're now waiting to get the first draft?
Yes.
Okay. And you don't have any idea when that's going to be available? Okay. Any questions from? All right. The status of the MOU with the district attorney. I had sent a draft of the MOU to Ms. Hammer for her comment. Have you had a chance to look at it, Ms. Hammer?
Yes, I've had a chance to look at it.
Are you going to provide comments back to me, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on that? Okay. The status of the review of the Oversight agency. This is what's become referred to as a 30-city study. I should, for the benefit of my colleagues, since I and Ms. Hammer were the only ones there, report to you that I attended the first organizational meeting of the task force on the POC that was created by the City Council. The meeting was an interesting one. It was initially chaired by Mr. Zalman from the City Council staff until the task force was able to get a chairman, elect a chairman, and that took a very long time, it turns out. They spent some time discussing the issue, and then they had a series of votes, and they ended up with a 5-to-5 split because the ACLU representative was not able to attend, and it ended up that they decided to resolve the situation by getting him on the phone. And he voted, and the chairman was finally elected. They have set up a very tight schedule. There's some discussion already of whether they're going to have to go back to the City Council to get an amendment to the ordinance, because the ordinance calls for them completing their work and making their report to the City Council by December of this year. And so, frankly, my own view is that's going to be a virtual impossibility, particularly when you're talking about much of the work is going to have to be done during November and December during the holiday period. They have agreed on 2 meetings in case any of you want to attend, the public who might be interested in this. They've scheduled a meeting on Tuesday, September 3rd, the first public forum meeting on Tuesday, September 3rd, at the North Valley Senior Center from 5:30 to 7:30. They've scheduled the second meeting on Tuesday, September 17th at the West Mesa Community Center from 5:30 to 7:30. I believe they agreed to schedule the next meeting on October the 17th. Instead, well, they were originally talking about October 1st. I think the last, they agreed to set the third meeting for Thursday, October 17th at the Cesar Chavez Community Center from 5:30 to 7:30, provided, assuming that they could get that center at that time and date. And then they're going to schedule a fourth meeting in the fourth quadrant of the city. That has been, that's not scheduled at this point. And they're also talking about having a virtual town hall in which people can communicate on I'm not sure I understand it very well, bulletin board or something that make comments and respond to questions and respond to other people's comments. They had that open for a week or so, but they're still working on that as to what they're going to do with it. There's a relationship with Bruce Perlman from the UNM School of Public Administration that's going to help staff their work. And that's about as far as it got. They've scheduled another meeting. Do you have the date of the next meeting? Their next meeting? Ira Hamel?
Working on it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can we return to the status of review of other oversight agencies?
Yeah, this is a preliminary to that, if you could bear with me, Commissioner Siegel. Well, she's,
It's September the 10th at 5:30, City Council Conference Room.
What time?
5:30. That's the City Council Committee room on the 9th floor of the City Council, City Hall, I guess it is. Okay, the point of my letting you know that is because it is an extremely tight schedule. They're talking about having 4 meetings in September and October, and then in November and December, doing whatever they're going to do with the report to the City Council by December. So whatever input or we may have in this process, either individually or more importantly as a commission, as a committee and commission, is going to happen pretty quickly if we're going to have, because it's not going to help if we finish our 30-city study and this is in line with Commissioner Barker's comment about the Nicole meeting. It's not going to help if we finish a 30-city study in November and they've already decided what they're going to do and make their recommendation to City Council without us, without any input from us as a formal organization. So I think we're under some time pressure to get this resolved. I've asked for information, even partial information from folks and from the commissioners who were supposed to be making contacts with various cities. And there's very limited amount of contacts that have been made. Interestingly enough, Commissioner Sobian, who's no longer on the commission, has contacted a substantial number of the assigned organizations. I thought I had a list. I do have a list here somewhere. Here it is. So we have, at this point, we have partial information from Salt Lake City, Chicago, Denver, New Orleans, New York, San Francisco, District of Columbia, Knoxville, Albany, New York, Austin, Texas, Dayton, Ohio, and St. Petersburg, Florida. But as you can see, it's not close to the 30 cities altogether, and so my thought was to open it up for discussion as to how we do this and how we proceed.
Right.
And what makes sense. And maybe, apparently, there's been some limited assistance that the staff at the IRO has been able to provide us, but they don't have a lot of extra time to do much in terms of helping, so. You wanted to say something?
Chair
Sam?
Shine, yes. I spoke with John Zaman of City Council, and he asked me about the time frame of when the LTP study, what the schedule was looking like. And I told him that it was my best belief that the LTPC would finish its work by the October meeting, and that he would present it to the November POC, first week of November POC meeting, and Mr. Zaman thought that would coincide well
I don't
with
think there's any realistic possibility that we can do that. That's my view. You're talking about our having a report.
I wouldn't say a report, I would say the raw data. That's what I told him. The raw data would be gathered by October.
But I'd say that, yeah, that's what I mean by the report. That's all I'm expecting to produce is the matrix with the questions and the answers. And you opined that it was going to be when it was going to be ready?
In 8 weeks from now,
When in October? In October?
at the October LTPC, which would be the 4th week of October, the 24th.
Commissioner Siegel. Did you want
I didn't have my hand up, but you read my mind.
to- Are you ready?
I actually did want to say that I think that somebody should approach the, and I sort of volunteer you, should approach the council's task force and tell them that we have a 30-city study underway formally, show them the matrix that we've been looking for, and tell them that we expect results in some form, maybe not perfect form, and under what time frame, and then at least they're on the lookout for it and can anticipate that set of data. Until now, it's rumor, innuendo, and secondhand knowledge to them.
Well, no, this matrix was provided to all the city council staff and all the city councilors.
But that's not the,
No,
Mr. Chairman.
I understand, but it's more than rumor and innuendo. I mean, it's formally been distributed. But go
The
ahead.
committee is their own entity that was formed, and I think that we owe them the courtesy to deliver the empty matrix that they can understand what's going to be in it, and give them our expected time frame. I think we could also help ourselves and help that committee, perhaps by pre-receiving permission from the full POC to distribute the raw data to them as soon as it's practical and available.
I would, my own personal view is we ought not to distribute anything unless it goes through the POC. In terms of the full data. I mean, I don't have any problem with showing other people a matrix. We've done that. But in terms of the completed study, that is the data, I think that's got to go through the POC. Commissioner C.
Well, to help that group, if they're interested in this data, and they may not even be, but if they are interested in it, we could also call a special brief meeting of the full POC just to consider the data and ratify its dissemination to this third group, which is the council's committee. So I think we can look at that and try and get it out to them as soon as if they want it, on their time frame. Thank you.
Well, I would also point out that it has been my intention that in addition to developing this data in the study, to put together a proposed series of amendments to the POC ordinance that would be reviewed by this committee, and if this committee was willing to recommend it to the full POC could then review it, and if the full POC thought that those proposed amendments made sense, to recommend those amendments to the task force and to the city council. But I can assure you that all of that, the full report and the drafting of amendments are not going to be ready what is it, third week in October. What do I mean, fourth Thursday in October. But Commissioner Peterson, did you? Commissioner Barker, did you have anything with that?
What was the question?
Well, do you have anything you want to add to this discussion?
No, I think that the October date is probably doable for most. I believe the October date is probably doable for most of us. But I concur that it should come to us first and then go to the full POC.
When you say doable, when would you, in other words, when would you be, if we tried to stick with the fourth Thursday in October, which is, do you have the calendar, what date is that?
I have it here.
October 24th.
Say we tried October 24th, when would people be prepared to have their completed section of this done? Because there's a lot of dealing with this data. Once it's done, it's not going to go the way people present it to me. I'm going to have to sit and correlate it and collate it and make sure it's consistent one with the other and all that. I mean, by what date could you have
Would you see us bringing the raw data to this meeting in October and then having the numbers crunched and the data somewhat smoothed by the November, or by the November our committee, or to the full commission in November?
Look, I think what, unless I misunderstood, I think what Ms. Hammer indicated she told us, the city council staff, is that our study would be completed and be available to the task force and the city council, if they want it, by October 24th.
No, what I said was, what I told Mr. Zaman, based on what my understanding of where the process was that the data would be completed by October 24th here, and then presented to the full POC 2 weeks after that on November the 8th, I think, whatever 2 weeks after October the 24th. And then after that period would be available to Mr. Zaman to distribute to the task force as he felt fit.
So what that means is that basically we would be in a position to have a final ready to recommend to the POC on October 24th.
Right, and it looks like the October POC meeting is November the 14th. Because of the way that they're set, there's an extra Thursday in November, and so there would be 3 weeks between the LTPC and the November POC.
We especially set the November.
We set it, as we always do, the fourth Thursday of the month.
The November meeting?
The September.
I'm talking about the November meeting for the POC. Is that I guess was the LTPC
The
meeting we set
LTPC, the second
because of Thanksgiving.
Right, but
Set
the
it
second
special.
Thursday of the month in November is the 14th. So there would be 3 weeks between the LTPC in October and the November POC. As
So
opposed to its
I-
customary 2.
But assuming for the moment that everyone was able to give me a pretty complete matrix on their cities, I mean, I would need, my own views, I'd need a good 3 weeks in order to collate that and draft a piece of proposed legislation. So we're talking about getting that stuff, and it wouldn't be presented here. You'd be submitting it for legal review to Mr. Du Bois, who'd pass it on after he reviewed it to me, for me to collate and work with. But if you're talking about 3 weeks, it's 3 weeks before October 24th.
Well, right now we have 8 weeks until October 24th. Between October 24th and the next POC, there are 3 weeks until November the 14th.
Commissioner Siegel.
Mr. Chairman, I suggest we leave the item on the agenda for LTPC for our next meeting, and again, I hope we can have one in the month of September. And I see no reason why many of us can't turn in good raw data to you within a week or two. You may need to contact us through legal, which is acting as our intermediary both ways, so that we're not having direct communications. And via that arrangement, you may be able to smooth out the data and at least have the raw data ready to give away much sooner than you think. And I think that's the goal that we can aspire to, even if a few cities are missing. Of course, we up here can't control that other commissioners haven't been able to reach these people. I've had my own problems with the folks I tried to reach that fell into spam boxes and so forth. But I have 2 of my 3 cities done, and I expect the 3rd within days.
I'm not sure.
I also don't know that it's our charge necessarily at this point to attempt to draft replacement legislation or changes to the ordinance. The council committee's doing that anyway. Anything else we come up with is extraneous gravy we can offer to them, but I don't know that it's necessarily my, at this point, goal. That's changed because of council's legislation.
I guess one thing I would add, you mentioned it's taken on its own name, the 30-city study. We may want to not put that title on it in case we come up short of the 30 cities.
Well, I mean, that's what it is, and at least for the time being, and that's what everybody's been referring to, so I'm not sure, I just confuse people by changing the name, but
Perhaps
one of the
city
problems
has-
is that with the representation's been, it's the MGT cities. That's where the cities came from.
But they're not all MGTs, aren't they? Did you go beyond MGT?
There are the MGT studies plus some cities recommended by the U.S. Department of Justice
Right.
for civil
So-
rights. And those are the ones I'm doing, so they're gonna be done, so that's not. But anyway, that's, I think that's an issue. Well, I just don't know. Even with that schedule, it would not go to the task force until November 14th. You then have Christmas, you then have Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I'd be shocked if they could put something together in that period of time, in that 3-week period. So I think it's, in fact, what I'll do is I'll call Mr. Zalman, communicate my views in terms as chairman of the committee, my views on how soon we can get this done. But let's leave it on that for the time being. I would point out to my colleagues that it's been my experience. Initially I had no trouble getting a lot of information from folks, but it's been my experience that quickly drops off when they see how extensive our questions are. And so what I found is much more successful, and it involves more work by each of us, is to go on the websites and get their annual report, get their ordinance, and any other reports that they have, review them. Many of the questions can be answered from those public documents based on your just going through them, et cetera. And then obviously some questions can't be answered that you need to, but then what I do is, having partially filled it out, 30, 40, 50% filled out, I email it to the head of the particular organization and say, we've reviewed this, we're doing the study, I'll send a copy of the email to you through Mr. Du Bois if you want to, just not rebuild the wheel, and said simply that this is a study we're trying to do, we may make it available to Nicole. Nicole may be interested in. I've been put in touch with the chair of one of the Nicole committees who wants to find out exactly what we're doing. They may want to publish it. I've talked with Professor Sam Walker, who is of the Walker Lunar Report that led to the creation of this POC in the 90s. And I've run it by him, and he, in terms of whether we're rebuilding, duplicating the wheel, and his view is that this is a study, this kind of study has not been done before, so it would be very useful to the community. And so, so I've said in the emails that this may be published in Nicole. Please review what I've put in there for accuracy, because we certainly want to make it accurate. And by the way, could you also answer these 10 questions? And I've gotten a fairly good response, as opposed to not returning my calls initially. So that just as a strategy, you may want to consider that possibility. But that's time consuming, because it may take you a day to go through that written material for each of these cities, depending on how carefully you do it. But anyway, anything further on this? right, let's leave open the issue of, let me just ask that people get the material done as quickly as possible. I'll contact Commissioner Barella, who's also working on this, and I think that's all, just 4 of us and Commissioner Barella. And because Commissioner Sobey is no longer on the commission. Anything further on this issue? Okay. Let's see. Find my agenda and all this stuff here. Okay, the next item on the agenda is